Hola.
Hello, good evening. It could take you 2 to 3 seconds to say a name. So I would like to say the names of the 6 million people the foundation has supported in all of this time. And the foundation is still here, convinced that effort and dedication have been worthwhile. And we are going to tell you why this is so important and how we reached this point. And what better than a video to summarize all that we have done over this time.
Todas esas mujeres luchadoras, salgamos adelante.
Me dio esa oportunidad de aprender que eran productos de crédito.
De la cota.
A la que la Fundación Microfinanzas BBVA ayudó.
A millones de personas a tener una mejor calidad de vida.
Que hay que tener es ganas.
Solo hay ahora.
Coincido totalmente.
I entirely agree with you that these initiatives deserve a very loud round of applause. Your Majesty, you have also had an opportunity to get a first-hand idea of what microfinance is. Thank you very much for all the work you have done. The foundation really is really proud to have you as its supporter. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mimi. Thank you. First Vice President, Secretary General, President of BBVA, ambassadors, authorities, dear friends. I also want to extend my warm greetings to those of you connected over the internet. This evening is very special and very important because it will be an evening full of emotions where we will see that terms such as financial, economic, and digital inclusion, access, rural development, social transformation, all of those terms have a face, and they also have a name, and they have a history behind them where it drains, but it also clears up. Because what happens after the rain is also very important. These are difficult stories which received the necessary encouragement. we are going to get to know about the lives of brave people from very vulnerable environments who have established a relationship with a foundation that places entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs, at the center. This is a trust-based network to mitigate multidimensional poverty, which is suffered by millions of people in Latin America. Those of us here are fully aware of that reality, but we are also capable of celebrating this 15 years of success of the Microfinance BBVA Foundation. This decisive action of BBVA has been of paramount importance, in addition to the real transformation of thousands of people, and this really is what keeps us moving forward. I am delighted to join in this celebration of the first 15 years of the foundation. But I think that now we should learn more about those lives, and we should give the floor to the people who really know all that the foundation has done for all of these people. But before that, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. Thank you. Thank you, Your Majesty. 15 years ago, BBVA created this institution, which is a non-profit making institution to make inclusive development visible in one of the most unequal regions in the world, namely Latin America. And this is how everything started. This was an idea of BBVA, but this idea wouldn't have been possible with the support of NGOs. And so a project was created. This was the first project in 5 different countries. And this is recognized by the OECD, which for the 3rd year in a row has said that the foundation is the entity which makes the biggest contribution to the development of Latin America. And I think that BBVA should take pride in this statement by the OECD, because we have heard Carlos Torres talk about the courage of these people, and he, has visited those regions. He has met these people, not just in Colombia, but also in Peru. Mr. Chairman, it's always a pleasure to listen to you. You have the floor, sir. Thank you, Mimi. Your Majesty, First Vice President of Spain, Secretary General of the Latin American Secretariat, authorities, members of the Board of Trustees, representatives of the Foundation Latin America, panelists, dear friends, welcome to this event, where we are commemorating the 15th anniversary of the Microfinance BBVA Foundation. First of all, I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to Her Majesty the Queen for her presence and for her unstinting support to our foundation. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. The Microfinance Foundation was created in 2007 to put all our experience in the banking sector at the service of the most vulnerable. The idea was to place the opportunities of this new era within everybody's reach. In this 15 years, the foundation has supported over 6 million vulnerable people, which is a figure which is trebled if you include the families of these people, of these entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs. The foundation has invested $18 million in microloans for, geared to low-income entrepreneurs, and we envisage to invest another $5 million until 2025. This is a huge project which has turned the foundation into the first entity in aid for development in Latin America, and it is also the second such entity at a world level. These are microloans which exert a very significant and lasting impact because they help build people their dreams, as our motto for the 15th anniversary says. And I've been privileged to visit many times many of these entrepreneurs to get to know their businesses, you know, a restaurant, a small sewing club, an arepa stall in the middle of a street. These are small businesses which, in spite of their size, are able to transform lives, not just the lives of the entrepreneurs, but also the lives of their families and their communities. So they have an impact which goes beyond the economic impact. And, you know, but there's still a lot to do. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen, we saw that poverty rates increased. According to the World Bank, 1.4 billion people in the world face financial exclusion. 1/3 of the population in developing countries do not have a bank account. And so the foundation, thanks to digitalization and connectivity, wants to make available such services to millions of entrepreneurs who are longing for a better future. Our focus is always on helping these people progress, providing them with the counseling they need, because these people come from vulnerable areas. So what we do is we visit these entrepreneurs in their homes with a tablet which help them counsel these entrepreneurs. And I've had the opportunity to see these people in action, and they really get to very far off places. As you will remember, Your Majesty, last year we held a similar event, and we were also honored to have you. We spoke about extending the access to internet to remote areas in Peru and Colombia. We also mentioned at that event that, we have helped 60 such remote areas have access to internet. I also want to speak about training. My mother was a teacher, and my 4 grandparents were teachers, so I can attest to the huge transforming power of education for the lives of people, and the role of education as a way of helping people realize their dreams. The foundation every year trains hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs in digital marketing, finances. This year, 800,000 people will have been trained. The foundation also provides grants and scholarships at highly emotional ceremonies, such as the one we held recently in Colombia. We have implemented a scholarship program at the toughest time, at the toughest stage of the pandemic. And these grants help the children of entrepreneurs go to university. And today we have Kelly Zapata here at the meeting. I don't know where Kelly is, but we will talk to her in a minute, as well as to her mother. They are a clear example of the transforming effect of these scholarships, but I'm going to leave this for later. This is a long-term endeavor that we have with training. The future clearly is in the hands of the young generation. They are the hope of their families, of their communities, and these young people are, I'm sure, going to be capable of improving their countries and improving our world. And this is the main aspiration of their parents and the motivation that pushes them to try and give them a better life. And in the foundation, we are going to work indefatigably to give them all the opportunities they need to keep building dreams. And now I will give the floor to the first Vice President of the Spanish government. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes.
Good evening, Your Majesty, ambassadors, authorities, dear friends. There are three reasons why I'm particularly excited to participate in this event. First of all, because I thought that in 2007, when the foundation was created, well, that was precisely when the financial crisis started, and so many things have happened since then. Because, you know, one crisis succeeded another, and then we had the pandemic, and now we have a war. Also in Spain, we had that volcano in the Canary Islands. And of course, not to mention the difficulties faced by the countries the foundation operates in. But in spite of all the vicissitudes, the foundation has kept up its work. And this leads me to my second reflection and the reason why I'm so excited. Because that idea of inclusive and sustainable growth, you know, everybody talks about it now. But in 2007, things were different. Now everybody's clear that to grow sustainably, we should also grow in a fair way, helping those who have least, helping identify talent and trying to help create fairer societies which help men and women develop their full potential. And in this respect, I think it is praiseworthy for the foundation to have realized back in 2007 that it was not just about making money. It was also important to contribute to the development of the countries they operated in. And this leads me to the third reason why I am excited to be here, which is that the work of the foundation symbolizes that invisible bridge that goes over the Atlantic and which brings Spain together with Latin American countries. And this should make us realize that when there is a difficult situation, it is important for everybody to collaborate and to strengthen that bridge that unites us to our Latin American friends. And I don't want to run on because there's still a lot to come this evening. But let me tell you that I really hope to be able to come back next year to this wonderful celebration. Thank you.
El próximo año ya serán 16 años.
So next year, we're going to turn 16. Let's hope we're all here then. And now let's talk about some of the most important challenges. And for that, we have journalist Marisa Rodriguez, who will be chairing a panel with very knowledgeable experts. Thank you, Mimi. When I was asked to chair this panel, I thought about how important it would be for journalists to be able to talk about precisely what we're going to be talking about today, reducing poverty, trying to make sure that everybody can have their opportunities, the empowerment of women, sustainability. And this is something that is really very important for citizens. And it is extremely important for the 3 million low-income entrepreneurs who have enjoyed the support of the foundation. The foundation works through strategic priorities, such as inclusion, empowerment of women, sustainability, and education. Those are the basic pillars of the foundation. These are pillars which are present across all national and international agendas, but they have featured in the Foundation's agenda for many years, since 2007. And it is also very important for the Foundation to measure the effect of its policies, because if you don't measure something, it's very difficult, to see whether you are successful or not. And poverty should not only be measured in terms of revenues. Poverty is also reflected in our dwellings, or in our health systems, or our education systems. To talk about all this, we have our experts. Andres Alaman, Secretary General of the Latin American or Ibero-American Secretariat. Please join me. On the panel, Michelle Bousset, Senior Advisor for Human Development from Oxford University. She was recently appointed new director of the UN Programme for Development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Sophie Certain, Chief Executive Officer of CGAP, which is an independent think tank devoted to financial inclusion associated to the World Bank. And finally, Javier Flores, Director General of the BBVA Microfinance Foundation. So I think you should move a little bit so that I can be at the center. So let's start with one first question I would like to ask you. In your opinion, in the last 15 years, what has been the major step taken towards sustainable development? Well, before anything else, I would like to greet Her Majesty, the bank's management. They have really been visionary, and they should be proud of that. I have no doubt that the most important thing that happened in the last 15 years in terms of sustainability, and this is something the first Vice President mentioned, is the adoption of the SDGs as a core concept. If you look at the different countries find it difficult to find common programs, and sometimes the differences that exist make it impossible for those common programs to be articulated. So for the world to have a global development program with targets, ambitions, and calls, which has really changed the concept of development, and this is a major step forward. For me, for these SDGs to exist, and for countries to realize them, and for companies to incorporate them, and for civil society organizations to transform themselves into activists to defend these SDGs, is for me the most significant change that has taken place in the last few years. Your Majesty, bank managers, I couldn't agree more with the Vice President and with the General Secretary of the Ibero-American Secretariat. I think that the most significant advance in the last 15 years has been to recognize that development needs to be sustainable. Otherwise, it cannot be called development. And this has many implications. We cannot just construe development without regard to sustainability, because everything should be considered a multidimensional phenomenon, and multidimensionality is of great importance, and the definition of multidimensionality should be defined by the people themselves. And if our public policies do not look at this multiple dimensions, then we will get nowhere. So if development needs to be sustainable, it's not enough for it to be inclusive, and it's not enough to embark on multiple dimensions. We should also be aware of the limitations imposed by nature. It is very important to understand that the effort of governments is not enough. The active cooperation of all the sectors of society is very important, and the foundation is a clear example of how the private sector and the NGOs working together with the people, not just working for the people, but working hand in hand with the people, we can move towards this sustainable development.
Sophie, well, first, I would like to thank all the authorities, and I would like to thank you for inviting me to take part in this very interesting roundtable. And I agree with what we've already said, but I'm going to take it to the financial world. For me, some of the most important developments, more transformational changes in the last decade are specifically the acknowledgement of the key role that financial inclusion can play when it comes to building a more inclusive, resilient world. And we've seen this, for example, when we take a look at organizations that design financial standards such as the Basel Committee or the Financial Stability Board, which up until a decade ago would only focus or were mainly focusing on ensuring financial stability, and now they've included within their standards proportionality goals, which, for example, what these do is they acknowledge that financial stability and financial inclusion must go hand in hand in order to ensure safety. And we see this with international organizations such as the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, which have developed the index we've mentioned earlier, the FINDEX, which is an financial inclusion index, which didn't exist a decade ago, and they've included their assessment of the financial environment. So not only financial stability, but financial inclusion modules. Countries, as we've already seen, have seen a huge increase in what we've done. They've developed strategies, financial inclusion strategies. On the other hand, the private sector, just like the BBVA, has already proven for the whole sector. We've also, this has been acknowledged much more than it was before, that we have to really not only need to get financial results, but social impact. And this is transforming into an actual rule. And I think that this is very important development. Javier. Well, first and foremost, I would like to thank Her Majesty, the backing you've given the foundation for so many years and for being our honorary chair. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the Vice President, Her Presence, and of course, Carlos Torres, the CEO for BBVA. Again, the chair for BBVA, and I agree wholeheartedly with what my colleagues have said. And when we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, the organization, ever since 2015, we've been part of the private sector group that had been backing the UN, the US in New York, and we're one of the international organizations that took part. And back then in 2015, when the SDGs started appearing, but if I had to focus only on the foundation and go down to brass tacks, I would say that the technological revolution and the digital transformation have been key aspects in these last 15 years for the foundation, because we have to acknowledge that the disruption technology has wrought, and digitalization has allowed hundreds of thousands of people, we're talking about 1.5 billion people in the last 15 years. And this has given people the opportunity of democratize, to have a universal access to formal financial services. And I think that this is a key aspect of the last 15 years. And at the same time, I believe that all this technology we're receiving is something that is very, very important when it comes to offering accessibility to matters as important as health, education, and access to information. I think that everyone has to have access to this. So I would say that if I had to focus on my experience, I would say that technology and digitalization have been key. Mr. Alamand, given our current situation in Latin America after the pandemic and such an unstable global economy, what are the key challenges for your region? I know it's a huge question. What are the key challenges, and what do you think is the best way to tackle them? Well, Latin America is a land of opportunity, but like you said, it's also a land of challenges, as you very cleverly pointed out. And if I had to connect this to what concerns us, I think that the key challenges Latin America has ahead, the three ones are fostering growth, improving its governability, and increasing trust. And we have to do these things hand in hand. As for fostering growth, Latin America has a debt. I wouldn't say a huge breach, but we're lagging a little bit behind. 40 years ago, we talked about Latin America, given its low growth, had a lost decade. It's been 40 decades, and in this decade, we're talking about a lost decade once again. So, fostering growth, I think, is a key priority. Carlos mentioned the impact microfinance has on families' lives, and I'm sure we'll discuss the impact it has, especially on women. But financial inclusion has a global impact. Financial inclusion gets rid of the informality that torments Latin America. When we improve the formality of financial relationships, we improve productivity, and when we improve productivity, we increase the likelihood of growth. And when we increase the likelihood of growth, there are more and more opportunities to defeat poverty and to get rid of inequality, which is why I think it's so important to think of this initiative that the foundation has presented, because it has a direct impact. It's direct action and has a global impact on this, well, to-do list Latin America has, which is to increase its prosperity, to improve our democracy, and higher social capital. Michelle, could you talk to us about the multidimensional poverty index, what it measures, and how it affects the most important aspects such as housing, education, and health? So before tackling the index itself, I'm going to build on what you said when we started the roundtable and what Her Majesty mentioned. Poverty is a multidimensional aspect. Historically, all countries all over the world, Europe, Latin America, all countries, we've understood poverty as a lack of income. And so that's how we've tackled poverty. So that's how we've measured it, and we've tackled it like that when it came to public policy. But like we mentioned earlier, but it's not because Oxford decided to talk about it like this, but it's because people who live in poverty, from the moment we start communicating with them and we see what it means to live in poverty, you see that it is a multidimensional aspect. Let's think about our well-being. Poverty and well-being are two sides of the same coin, and our well-being at the end, well, obviously our income plays a huge role, but it's not the only aspect. So let's think of our well-being. Well, we'll think of health, our opportunities to have income, to have a dignified life, having a roof over our heads, having access to education, or guaranteeing education for children. So Oxford University has developed a methodology to capture these lacks that simultaneously have an impact on people's lives. This is a different aspect. We don't live access or non-access to health independently of our education. Everything happens at the same time, and we can't tackle it when it comes to public policy or private policies as different separate realities. This index allows you to, once you apply it, to see not only who lives in poverty, given their lacks, but how that poverty is designed, how it changes from person to person, from region to region, how it varies from adults and children, men and women, how intense it is, and how this intensity fluctuates. So this is a very strong public policy tool, and I don't like using it as an index, but as a tool to make choices. And if we go to a personal level, I believe that this is a tool that allows us to properly channel our love for neighbors, and this is a love we can all feel, but we sometimes don't know how to externalize love for our neighbors properly. And in order to not go on and on and on, even though this index is tackled between the PNUD, the UNDP, and the OPHI, this has been adopted by about 100 countries as an official poverty measure beyond income poverty. And these national indices are unique for each country because they reflect each country's public policy. This methodology has been translated into the private field, and this is the appropriate moment to mention this. And even though it had reached the private field, and there are companies that are taking advantage to see what their collaborators have lacks, but the foundation is the first one to use it not only to measure what happens with their collaborators, but with their clients. And this complements monetary solutions. Very important, without a doubt. Sophie, according to the last Global Findex report, financial inclusion has increased during the pandemic. And even though this is positive, there's data that shows that poverty is increasing in the coming years. Well, it will keep on increasing. How can we explain this paradox? Well, you are very right, and it is true that for the first time in 3 decades, poverty has grown as a consequence of the pandemic, and the World Bank estimates that about 100 million people have gone below the extreme poverty threshold because of the pandemic. And that's, given our inflationary and our food crisis, well, this is also having an impact. And the World Bank is estimating that the impact of the climate crisis could lead 132 more million people below this threshold. And this could be a result for 2030, about 7% of the world population. This is 600 million people under extreme poverty instead of the 3% we had set for ourselves as a goal. And Javier, like you mentioned, it is true that before the pandemic, this accelerated during the pandemic. We've seen public investment in digital infrastructure in many countries. So, for example, Indian stacks are a very well-known model which have given rise to financial inclusion, especially digital financial inclusion, which is very relevant. And in the whole world, we've mentioned the Findex, which has been mentioned earlier. This has shown that the amount of people who have a financial account as of today has gone from 63% to 71%. And Latin America had the highest growth all over the world, 18%, in order to reach 73% of all adults. Now, it is important to understand that having a bank account isn't the end of the road. That isn't our goal. There are several challenges ahead, basically. First, 1.4 billion people don't even have a bank account. And these are the poorest of the poor, the people who live in rural areas. Most of them are women, but we'll mention this later. We're talking about young migrants. So we're talking about people who are already in an unstable situation, and they don't even have a bank account. And like I was mentioning, having a bank account is not enough to ensure inclusive development, to ensure that people can take advantage of the economic opportunities we have had. You need savings, you need credit, you need insurance in order to be able to face the shocks that life sends their way. So there are challenges. So to me, beyond being a paradox, what we have ahead is an opportunity. We have an opportunity to basically take advantage of this digitalization, which we've mentioned in Latin America, in order to face this poverty, which keeps on growing and including more people and to create a more inclusive future. And we know what we have to do, because what happened during the pandemic is we have the model. We know that digitalization and creating connectivity, taking connectivity to rural areas, digitalizing public payment, private payments, developing people, we can do this. Developing people as agents. We're not going to only talk about statistics, but about people. Javier, the foundation has been backing millions of people. You've been on the ground. What do you think of the work you've done? Well, summarizing 15 years in 2 minutes is going to be quite the feat. We've mentioned some figures here. The chair for BBVA said we've had an impact on 6 million people, with an indirect impact of about 18 to 20 million people. $18 million on an average of $1,000 per credit just this year in 2022. It's been a learning process, a continuous learning process, and we've learned of and from and with our clients. It's been very intense. We've tried to position the foundation in areas where banks aren't there, where people don't want to go, remote areas, rural areas, where we've gone to fields, basically peri-urban areas, because that's where poor people will have the least opportunities. So we've bet hard on technology. We've tried to digitalize our operations, but we've started digitalizing everything. This isn't only our financial services, but education, training people when it comes to digital connectivity, and it's been a wonderful process. We've learned, like Sophie mentioned, it's not about having a bank account, it's using a bank account and using it responsibly. And responsible use means training and walking with our clients. This isn't just giving a credit, this is accompanying people, the families, for however long, 5, 6, 8, 10 years. We've learned a lot, but what we've learned most of our entrepreneurs is the resiliency and the adaptability and the talent to reinvent themselves they have. And we've seen that 73% of our clients had seen their income reduced when compared to pre-pandemic levels. And this 73%, 36% had gone below 50%, and 20% lost everything. And these people have reinvented themselves and they've made their way. And like we mentioned here, if you don't measure it, it doesn't exist. In 2011, we launched our Social Security report, and we've been measuring this for over 10 years. We've got data and information from our clients for over 10 years, and we started measuring their vulnerability, what made their business be what they were, what margins they had, how they could generate assets. But we realized that that's important, but we couldn't stay there. We had to go one step beyond, and we have to encourage them to save, to think of any problems that can appear in their lives. And so floods, droughts, if you're sick, you can't go on. We started looking when we met Michelle, we started to be worried about what lacks our clients have beyond monetary poverty, how they live, what conditions they find themselves in at a home level. What do they have, what they don't have when it comes to health, when it comes to access to drinking water, access to health services, home. And we've tried to take this into account to improve their quality of life. And finally, we're analyzing digital poverty, how poor our clients are from a digital point of view, but having access and being able to afford a cell phone and being able to access networks. And this has taken a huge amount of work, and I'm very, very proud of it, especially thanks to our teams. Our American teams are following us, and all of our American people here, people we've learned with and from. And honestly, I'm very proud, and I'm very happy to have been able to lead this part of the foundation in which this learning process has matured. And I think that we are a beacon in the development world. Well, thank you very much for all of your knowledge and empathy-laden messages, which will help us write a much more optimistic story for Latin America and the rest of the world. Thank you very much, all four of you.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Marisa, and our speakers for this very important outlook. We still have a lot of homework. We still have a lot to build. And we still have a lot left to do. But now starts a different part of the event, which represents, well, we could say that it's a first-person view of what we've heard here in this panel. But I don't know. I'm feeling something. Can't you feel what I'm listening? It would appear that it's raining in here as well. And this rain is what Kelly is very aware of. She's a fashion designer who's had a scholarship paid for by the foundation with Olga, her mother, an entrepreneur from the foundation, and she's not only aware of the rain, but the tempests, the world, and what happens when it stops raining. Welcome, Kelly. Welcome.
Hola.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. As we mentioned earlier, I am one of the millions of people that have been mentioned here, and I am a person who can attest that after the storm, well, everything is much better. And we can see the appearance of new opportunities and a will to keep on fighting and skipping over those ponds in order to get back up again. After the rain, just like my mother has always done, and just like you will see in the documentary, we are the protagonist of with other families who have been helped by the foundation. Thank you very much.
Me enamoré como si nunca me hubiera enamorado a nadie. Yo andaba con ese tipo y yo creía que andaba con Dios. Perdí mi juventud, perdí mis años y miren, ¿qué me trae? Tuvimos un día una discusión muy fuerte con él y la policía nos sacó. Entonces yo le dije a la policía, ¿por qué nos va a sacar a nosotros si el problema es él, no nosotros? Que no, que porque era mejor, que él estaba armado. Bueno, él estaba armado, sí.
Desde pequeña pues yo tenía que ver cómo mi papá maltrataba a mi mamá, cómo la arrastraba por el piso, que de pronto con una cuerda, que muchas cosas. Entonces era como que uno de niño se desespera, no entiende esas cosas y es muy duro.
Ya ella me dijo un día, mamá, ¿se queda o se va? Pero yo me voy. Ella fue la decisión. Yo en la noche no dormí. ¿A dónde vamos a coger? ¿A dónde vamos a vivir si no tenemos nada? Yo no le decía decía nada a ella, yo me hacía la fuerte, pero yo la veía a ella, yo lloraba y yo decía, Dios mío, ayúdame a tenerle un estudio, bueno. ¿Esto qué? Para.
Difícil empezar de cero. Si no tienes nadie que crea en ti, nadie que te pueda apoyar tanto financieramente o tanto emocionalmente como lo hacía yo con mi madre, es muy difícil. Entonces siento que la ayuda del banco es como lo primordial en esto del cambio. Monta tu empresa chiquita, tu microempresa, susténtate.
Yo dije, bueno, yo sé hacer hallacas. ¿Qué tal que me queden bien? Me vaya bien con la hallaca. Entonces yo empecé a ofrecerlas. Pues deme la más gustosa, sí, porque es que la gente como le gusta mucho la hallaca con el cerdo. Vecino cabulla y la otra no tiene. Empecé como con 60, después con 70, después con 80. Ay, miren, salimos adelante. Las dos. Ya mañana me toca pararme a las 5 a hacer las hallacas. A levantarme a lo que es a picar, a condimentar la carne y a preparar la masa.
Falta, aparte de Jessica. ¿Esas son las suyas? Sí. ¿Son 3? Sí, para mí mi mamá es como mi ejemplo y yo a veces siento que también lo soy para ella. Entonces ese complemento ha estado ahí y cada día va creciendo más.
Trabajando con eso, pero ojalá, y eso es lo que yo quisiera.
No puedo decir que fue una niñez horrible o algo así, pero entonces es algo como que no quiero que se repita. Por lo tanto, quiero como cambiar eso. Entonces yo quiero ser como ese apoyo para el niño. Mi mamá siento que también está como más tranquila desde el punto en el que nos ganamos la beca universitaria porque era lo que ella quería, lo que ella anhelaba para mí. Y siento que lo que más quiere ahora pues sería verme graduada, ya de licenciada en educación infantil. Pero entonces si no se hubiera intentado, nunca estuviéramos acá experimentando que la vida es muy bella, siento yo. Nunca estuviéramos aquí experimentando que la vida es muy diferente a lo que nosotros pensábamos. Al encierro que teníamos, el encierro de vida que teníamos. Entonces es muy especial el poder ver la vida de otra manera.
Desde que tengo uso de razón, pues he vivido en el campo. Mis papás pues son campesinos, han tenido pues animales como vacas, cabras, caballos, gallinas. Mi papá siempre ha sido un hombre muy guerrero. Él, a pesar de todas las adversidades y dificultades que ha tenido que pasar en su vida, él siempre nos ha inculcado ese amor por la tierra, por el campo. Recuerdo muy bien que en el 2013 estábamos pasando por una crisis terrible y se nos enfermó una vaca de anaplasmosis. Y era como la única vaca que nos quedaba. teníamos plata para el veterinario. El día que lo pudimos conseguir vino y nos dijo, no, la vaca ya se les muere porque la anaplasmosis está en un estado muy avanzado. Fue entonces como yo, pues como una niña luchando, ella no se puede morir, es como nuestra última opción. Y fueron 2 semanas que yo me la luché por esa vaca y finalmente ella pudo como volver a la normalidad, volvió de eso y se mejoró. Ese día fue como donde descubrí el verdadero amor y lo que yo quería hacer, que es veterinaria. Como decimos aquí en Colombia, empezamos con las uñas. Entonces no teníamos como el dinero como para poder sustentarnos. Y fue cuando mi papá realizó un préstamo, compró unas vacas, algunos cultivos y con eso como que nos pudo sacar adelante.
La tierra es una herencia. La tierra no sola sin con qué invertirle no hace nada. Porque el campo es muy duro, es que el campo hay que invertirle mucho y si no hay quien lo apoye a uno ni una entidad que le esté colaborando, no puede no trabajar de cuenta de uno.
Es muy bonito saber de que de acá, de este pedacito de tierra, que realmente es muy pequeña, pues como el cultivo que tenemos, es algo muy, muy de nosotros, no es algo grande sino pequeño, de aquí sale alimento para otras personas.
Esa ochuva está demasiado, esa ochuva ya más está, si hay que meterle trabajo esta semana.
No, y tiene mucha plaga, es que por eso es que los cultivos no...
No, pero eso no, porque es la falta de fibrarla, organizarla, limpiarla, la maleza y ya.
Sí.
No, yo la recojo, pasa por aquí una jaulita, la recoge, la lleva al corregimiento de Mesopotamia, la envía a Bogotá, allá la seleccionan y ya la para exportación para Europa, Estados Unidos ya.
Y fíjense, ¿cómo creen que será mi señal y onda en AP? Fíjense, no está perpendicular, está un poco contigo, va a ser una onda contigo.
Pues en el campo, aquí cerca no habían escuelas ni colegios donde educarnos, entonces nos tocaba caminar. Y yo les decía a mis papás, yo no puedo más, no soy capaz, ¿qué hago? Y mis papás siempre estuvieron, mi papá apoyándome, no hija, por favor, piensa en su futuro, hay muy pocas oportunidades, pero tú puedes salir adelante. En la época de pandemia, en el 2021, apareció pues una oportunidad como poder salir a la universidad. En la ciudad no ha sido tampoco fácil porque ha sido un cambio bastante radical. Me he ido adaptando poco a poco, aunque me hace muchísima falta los animales, la familia. Lo que yo realmente quiero es poder como aprender y aprender para enseñar.
Ella quiere ayudar aquí en la finca, ayudarle a los vecinos, colaborarle a la gente pobre, gente que a veces no tiene ni con qué tener que dejar morir un animal porque no hay un veterinario cerquita o lo llaman y que no puede. Que se murieron demasiados animales. Pero entonces de ahí la importancia de uno tener un veterinario cerquita. Sea en la misma familia, sea un vecino, pero que esté en la zona.
Entonces la idea mía es como poder educarme, ser la mejor veterinaria y volver acá como para poder ayudar.
Esa camioneta le habían puesto ellos por nombre Camino del Cielo. Cuando uno veía esa camioneta que venía, ya uno estaba con ese pánico porque no sabía quién iban a montar en la camioneta, ¿cierto? Si podía ser uno, podía ser un amigo, podía ser alguien. Y venían con el manduco en la mano, con el palo en la mano, para darle el golpe. Y luego que él estuviera inconsciente, entonces lo echaban a la camioneta, lo sacaban fuera del pueblo y ya entonces ya sabemos cómo iba a regresar, ¿cierto? Entonces uno no podía pasar a ir a los cultivos, no podía, o sea, estábamos así. La situación económica se puso demasiadamente difícil. Y fue cuando mi esposa, entonces ella misma entonces le tocó fabricarle los diseños a mis hijas, ¿cierto?
Yo nací en un hogar de una mamá sola. Somos 5 hermanitos, no tuvimos acceso a la educación y toda la vida hemos estado emprendiendo, luchando por la supervivencia. Con algo debo comenzar y la idea fue coger uno de los vestidos de mis niñas y desbaratarlos con una cuchillita, con una agujita y un hilo. Comencé a armar, corté otra y comencé a armarlo ahí. Y ahí dije, no, yo creo que se podía hacer algo, de aquí puede salir algo productivo. Pues me dieron una ayudita que necesitaba, me dieron dinero y fui a la ciudad de Medellín, me compré 2 máquinas industriales, la plana y la fileteadora, compré accesorios para lo que quería hacer y por ahí derecho me compré una vitamina para mi cerebro y le dije a mi familia, téngame en paciencia esos 3 meses que faltan de este año, es temporada, aquí se trabaja por temporadas.
Desde que tengo ilusión de la vida, veo a mi mamá trabajar. O sea, es como ese ejemplo de emprendedora, guerrera, que le ha tocado muy duro vivir toda la etapa del conflicto y aún así buscar sacarnos adelante. La economía estaba dura y meterse en el papel de tengo que ayudar a mi familia y puedo emprender y puedo hacerlo, yo puedo. O sea, yo crecí con eso. Se sentaba literal al lado mío a enseñarme. Y ya eso como en la edad de 12 años yo ya sabía coger bien la máquina y le ayudaba.
Cuando llegué ya a vivir aquí en este barrio, que ya comenzamos a hacer nuestra casita, nos encontramos con un grupo de niñas de la edad de mis hijitas, ya tenían 12, 13 años. Y eran niñas que todas habían sido víctimas del conflicto, todas tenían una historia muy triste de contar. Mi papá falleció, lo mataron en la guerra, pero ellas soñaban con tener sus 15 años, aunque yo ni siquiera había pensado en eso.
Nosotros vivíamos en el campo, en la vereda. Entonces, al asesinar a mi papá, entonces nos hicieron salir de allá, que nos teníamos que salir de allá. Nunca me imaginé con un vestido de esos, ni que me lo fueran a celebrar.
Para yo ir haciéndole
Lo cumplí, me lo cumplieron. Me cumplieron ese sueño de ponerme un vestido bien lindo, de compartir con mi familia, de mis amigas. Después de nosotras ella como que se animó a hacer sus vestidos, entre todo el mundo la buscaba y ella de una comenzó a hacerlos.
Esto fue un conflicto que dejó muertos de lado y lado, de mucha gente y cayó por culpa de este conflicto. Unos pedían una cosa, los otros pedían otra. Y ahí está el resultado del conflicto. El que pagó fue el pueblo. Y a los 13 años llegué a la fila de la FARC porque miré una serie de cosas y entonces empezaron a buscarme para quererme matar. Duré 20 años en las filas de la FARC. Soy un sobreviviente más.
Mañana tenemos un evento especial con una quinceañera, con un hijo de uno de los desmovilizados del conflicto.
Ven, mami, préstame la punta de allá, que yo creo que es más fácil conectar la extensión. ¿El equipo va a quedar para acá o para el lado de la mesa?
Yo siento que como ayudamos en parte a niñas a cumplir un sueño en medio de un dolor, poder cumplir sueños con esos padres que nunca tuvieron la oportunidad de estar con sus hijos, por estar en la guerra, por estar en otros lados.
Y un aplauso para esta bella quinceañera que hoy se viste de gala, se viste de
yo pienso de que lo que están haciendo mi esposa y mi hija pues es algo muy importante, porque no solamente de esa niña sino de esos padres, de esa familia, esa alegría que hay en ellos, y eso lo llena a uno de felicidad, ¿cierto? Porque todo eso es paz, yo digo, eso es cierto, todo eso es paz, que las familias se sientan felices.
Y es que lo comentaba ahora.
Well, it's really a pleasure to have two of the main characters of this documentary, Ofelia and her daughter Kelly, two seamstresses who learned the trade just as they went along. Please join me. And I would also like to call Javier Zurita. Javier Zurita and Ofelia de Pablo. And I will start asking a few questions. So you were saying in the documentary that there is a vitamin that helps your brain be a better entrepreneur, but where did you get your strength? Because you had to fight against all the odds, but for some reason you managed to defeat all those obstacles and give your daughter a better life. Well, some of the things I inherited from my mother, who was also a peasant, and I learned from her the value of respect. And I also added perseverance, love, and a longing for success, and creating something different, which not only benefited my own family, but also my whole community. And that is how, I started off. I had to battle many difficult circumstances, but after the rain, and it rained very heavily, the sun rose, and I would like my daughters to become somebody and make a positive contribution to the world, not just to Colombia, but to the whole world. Thank you very much. It's really very inspiring. Javier, I hope to see this documentary in many festivals. So you really watched these families firsthand. So what did you learn from this experience as a journalist and as a citizen? Well, for us, it is always difficult when we access these people's lives. We always try and be as unobtrusive as possible, but we know that it is not easy for them, to have two people, two aliens, basically, that follow them from dawn to dusk. But these people are extremely generous, and that was particularly striking because, it's interesting because the countries that have suffered the most are the ones that have, the greatest human qualities. And I am an optimist by nature, which is not easy nowadays, especially if you see the news. But when you meet people like this, well, you realize that a better world is possible. And Kelly is a living example that you don't really need a lot of money to have a very good education. Having the right example and the right values is more than enough. What have your parents taught you, Kelly? Well, I think that they have taught me everything, because they not only gave me my life, but they have fought indefatigably to give me all that I did not have. So I owe to them my values, my principles, and this longing to be somebody and to make an impact on society. My mother's motto is perseverance, and she's always told me to dream big. And even if we don't have the money, at some point, God may give us what we need. So we need to work hard and be highly persevering, because with work and with perseverance, the sky is the limit. 3 years ago, the foundation created a scholarship so that the children of vulnerable peasants could go to university, and that program has a wonderful name. It is called Transforming Realities. Now, talking about transformation, Olga, how has your life changed? Because Kelly now goes to university. Yes, it's been very significant. The Transforming Realities program of BBVA has allowed me to materialize a dream which in principle seemed impossible. And Kelly is now going to start her 5th semester as a fashion design student. And this didn't just transform our family. This has been extremely important because it has helped Kelly grow a lot. And it is really remarkable. And also at a personal level, the fact that I am here today in this beautiful place, surrounded by important people, shows you that it is possible to move forward. We are survivors, but we are here to offer the world the best things we have as women. Because, sometimes a woman may feel that everything is impossible, but the fact that we are here shows that things are not impossible if you work for them. Ofelia was lucky to travel to Colombia and to different parts of the world, shooting documentaries and taking pictures. And what do you think these people have in common with the people you have met in other parts of the world?
Well, something that's very, very special is that they have an energy and a strength that is out of this world. And to us, well, actually being here with them, sharing the premiere of this documentary with all of you is very special, because we feel their strength. That strength you see in the documentary, that is their energy. That is their actual energy, and they can transform the world, but they need a little leg up. And so when you manage with a little bit of help to improve things, well, it really fills you up. And there are many places all over the world where people need a little bit of world, and people live through a lot of hardships. And well, it's wonderful to see how you are changing someone's life in Colombia. Thank you very much, both of you, for these wonderful results. And Kelly, to wrap up, a final message, because you're the result of your mother, who's learned a trade from the school of life, of hard knocks, and you're going to be able to fashion designer, and you'll be able to compliment her. So how are you going to help her and help your mother? When I would say that one of my dreams is already being fulfilled, which is I'm studying what I've always wanted. This is a huge achievement. And with my mother, we still have huge projects ahead. I want to have a party organization, and I would like to reach people and help people in our environment. So to help people outside of the world, that our project can grow and for it not to die, because I think that people have liked it a lot. And on a personal level, I would like for people to know me not only as a designer, for how I'm having an impact on people's lives, and to have a fashion brand and my own company would be a personal dream. Yeah, well, and dreams are achieved through hard work. So, well, thank you very much, everyone, for this space. Thank you very much.
Gracias por esos testimonios.
Thank you very much for those beautiful testimonials and those thoughts that push us to go beyond. Thank you very much, everyone, for all of the people who have logged on to our streaming from all around the world, especially in Latin America. Thank you very much for coming here. A huge hug from Madrid, and thank you very much.